This week, we have a fresh batch of new games. Our first one's going to be GaRpY versus Spart1e. I think a lot of people are in agreement that Spart1e, he has the advantage here on paper. I'd always like to see GaRpY get a result because he hasn't had the easiest time this stage. I mean, I don't think I need to tell you that. We can see the results speaking for themselves, but 2-1 or 3-0, I think that's the question here, Zenitix.
Gonna have to go for a 2-1. I think GaRpY put in a really good performance at Cypher last week, came out 3-0, the only 3-0 of the day. But as you say, like Spart1e and GaRpY are pretty well matched, and they both have found ways not to get the results they might deserve. I'm probably gonna have to go for 2-1 to Spart1e though. I do think he's still got a bit more to play for than GaRpY in this stage, and so with that in mind, I expect a slightly stronger performance from his side.
On that note, we'll take a look at the picks and bans. Now, I've spoken to GaRpY a little bit during this stage, behind the scenes, and there's almost been a degree of, look, you know, we're likely going to have to play for that relegation, so we get on by during these weeklies and, you know, play for keeping your Pro League life intact. And it's like you said, Spart1e does have more to play for here. Our first map's going to be Deep Embrace, which, oh my lord, you've seen a snowball and then you've seen Deep Embrace, so I think this is going to be important with how the map begins. And as we can see the picks there, the Strog coming out versus Ranger, very common picks on this map. Ruins of Sarnath up next, the Nyx being removed, Scalebearer versus Visor, so information on the side of Spart1e. And then Awoken, it's going to be mobility versus two guns, just that dual wield, the damage output. Interestingly, taking the slash away, actually, that's not something that you often see actually recently, so I do wonder about that one.
Yeah, that's pretty unusual because I don't think GaRpY even plays an awful lot of slash.
I almost wonder if Spart1e just didn't care, perhaps.
It might be one of those bans just to open up the pool a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, that a ban aside, there's nothing too untoward in terms of the overall picks and bans either side. Deep Embrace, I think, if with Doom out the equation, I think Ranger versus Strog is pretty much the meta there now. Some people prefer Keel in situations, but it's kind of fallen off a little bit. It's all about the speed. Now people have become a bit more astute in terms of positioning and defensive play on that map. Ruins, nice to see the Visor brought out. We don't see it an awful lot, but Ruins is obviously one of the better maps to see that champion. And Scalebearer is, again, a very good pick, pretty much on any of the maps nowadays, and GaRpY does play that very well. He does prefer it on a map like Ruins. And finally, moving into Awoken, the Blazkowicz is a bit more unusual. I mean, there's Athena still in the pool out there as well, which could have been picked up, so it's just a playstyle question. Often see it a lot more in the Americas scene than we do in EU, and often more on Veil, but it's still pretty good. Anarchy, I do like that pick on Awoken as well.
There'll be a heavy emphasis on that third map to just kind of play around GaRpY, one would imagine. If GaRpY doesn't get a good start and he is going to have that kind of eternal battle of being a light out of control, we've all seen what happens there. But at the same time, just having that sheer option to go, right, let's pull out more damage than GaRpY can possibly do. And I think it's going to especially work against him because, you know, we know there's a lot of rockets in play on Awoken. GaRpY's rockets are just... somehow he hits the most ridiculous directs, and I think that you know that there's going to be a lot more damage than you might think in these one-to-one encounters, so maybe having that extra damage output just helps him a little bit. But I guess that just remains to be seen, doesn't it? Curious over what the chat thinks. I do assume chat will be favouring Spart1e here. I even saw during the pre-show countdown a lot of people saying, hey, I think this could very much be a 3-0 for Spart1e. Would like to see GaRpY just get a game on the board, because if he is going to be in that mindset of we're not going to be very high on the leaderboard here, likely going to have to play in those relegation games, right? Let's just focus on getting maps to build the confidence, maybe build that playstyle a little bit more as we enter the final stage of this stage. You know, there's not many weeks left, and these stages do go on for a lot longer than Season 1. And I think we're loading into Deep Embrace right now, so it has become very much, it's one of the newer maps, of course, but the start is so important. You can get significantly behind before the 5-minute mark has even landed here, and you've got to be so careful.
You do. But we've actually seen GaRpY play some of the strongest maps on Deep Embrace, particularly from behind, sometimes playing the Keel. So I would actually have to pluck with him a little bit on this side. Again, as we broke it down in the intro, no one really has the benefits on the picks and bans side of things. Strog and Range are both incredibly adept at Awoken. But from what I've seen of these two players, obviously Spart1e has I would say a stronger snowball approach. If he gets ahead of steam and starts connecting with those rails, that's when he becomes sometimes unbeatable, even against the best players. But in terms of rounded exposure to this map, I've seen stronger performances on the defense from GaRpY. So because of that, I'm going to have to give it to GaRpY.
And here we begin. Checking things out from GaRpY's point of view first. That crouch slide so good on a map like this, especially seeing as, I mean, it's so ferocious. Heavy side spawn, which means that GaRpY gets that patented rocket launcher, so I think there could be worse starts for him. But chooses to push forward first before taking a rail, and I do find that to be kind of an interesting choice. I think he kind of expected Spart1e to grab the item, push in forward, get a little bit of that free rocket damage. Spart1e's not going to have a lot of weapons there to almost compete with that, especially if he gets to read on the jump pad, so interesting start, but enough time to offset the items at the very least.
More damage coming out from GaRpY at the start, but Spart1e does get away with the heavy. Does have time to pressure this Mega, but he's just going to rotate the map, pick up the relevant weaponry, and get into a better position up on the high ground to try and defend that position from GaRpY. Doesn't know exactly where Spart1e is, but will have a good idea of the defensive positioning as he works his way around by this lightning gun. They might meet up by the pillar. Spart1e is holding strong, and GaRpY retreats down to pick up the light.
I like that angle that GaRpY was holding at the very least, right? The surprise rocket landed through that pillar, but there wasn't a lot of real estate for him to kind of get max damage on the splash. The Dire Orb used, though. Spart1e does manage to take the item, but unfortunately they do not trade the rail. GaRpY just gets hit clean, and he's still railable. He has to be so careful here. Can he get it? No, he can't. The rocket comes out, and that's going to be the first frag for Spart1e, but man is tender. Thank God that Mega was nearby.
Yeah, just worked out all right for Spart1e. We'll pick up the second frag as well. Pretty clean. There is a long time before this next item. GaRpY's going to be pushing in. You know, Spart1e's pretty low. Doesn't connect. Big rocket coming out, and they trade. So who's going to get spawned by the heavy? Looks like it's going to be GaRpY. Doesn't have any weapons, though, and Spart1e would know that. That's why he's pressing here. GaRpY on the back foot. Does have the item. Only got a gauntlet to work with, and that's not going to be enough as Spart1e picks up frag number 4.
Being forced to take a point-blank encounter when you only have a starting machine gun, I mean, there are few more miserable scenarios to be forced on, so it was a fantastic push there from Spart1e. A nice little lead to begin with, only 3 frags, but that could easily start to skyrocket. I say we're only 2 minutes in. You can just see the nature of how ferocious this map can be. GaRpY without a rail fighting for the heavy here is going to be kind of tricky, just getting any kind of damage he can, especially with just the gaps between the floor. Not so favorable position for GaRpY, and that rail just makes things even worse.
Wow.
Spart1e has no reason to fear it. Gets a rail. I think might have actually missed that initial rail there, but he's able to recover anyway because of just a severe lack of weapons, Dan. GaRpY's had a real bad problem with it so far.
And now we see the challenge on a map like Leak Embrace. I mean, one, it's just Spart1e connecting with ridiculous rails, but it's when you have this level of lockdown, your opponent's connecting with these kind of shots off the spawn, and there's such a big split on the major items. Like, what do you do? Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for Spart1e to get into gear, but not today. He has come more than prepared. And wow, where's this defensive player I was crediting Spart1e for? As we're down 7-1 within 3 minutes, 8-1 with the 3-minute now gone.
It's just that fine art of being able to secure a frag and just making sure that the kind of frag doesn't end there, because you know there's going to be a rail lying in wait the moment they spawn again, and then the second that happens, it is so unbelievably difficult. Now, at the very least, that missed rail has given GaRpY an opportunity to take the heavy, but there's not a lot of health bubbles around where he currently is, and I think this is why Spart1e's sitting tight. I love that positioning, Dan. He knows that GaRpY has very little health to recover with, so he did kind of sit pretty waiting for those health to get taken, but unfortunately... Ooh, hang on a minute. Here comes GaRpY. Should be able to take the Mega at the same time. Spy had the right idea, but just couldn't land the damage there, and I think the orb on the pillar probably wanted to get a little bit further. Oh, he recovers. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, he did lose the frag there, but it does highlight a little bit of a weakness in Spart1e's game. It's just the overzealousness in some of his decisions. That was, you know, he's up enough to make it count, but slightly unnecessary to go as aggressive as he did with just a rail. And so, as amazing as he looks when he connects, when he misses, it can come back to haunt him. So it's kind of find that nice balance. But, you know, when he's connecting as much as he is today, this is what I said. He looks unbeatable and as good as some of the others.
I very nearly got ring out by that rail. Knocked down the death hole. But you actually rarely see a ring out on this map in that situation. But these close range rails, Spart1e, it's all he's got. He's only just picked up a rocket launcher. And he's still able to use the rail by itself. What is this? Insta-gib? Insta-gib, I guess, is the game that we're playing today, because he gets himself another frag on the board. Looks for an opening shot. Unfortunately, though, bit of a punishing spawn to miss the shot on, because GaRpY's going to have that LG to get free damage peppered out, but the denial on the Mega begins. GaRpY pushes forward. I like that push from GaRpY. It does secure the Mega. But what can he get from this? We hit that 5-minute warning. Man's already 10 frags down. It's going to be unbelievably difficult. Survives the rail. And that will allow GaRpY to get a shot on board. But he's got so much work left to go, Dan.
Yeah, and it's going to be, I mean, chances are slim at best, but you're going to have to keep pushing. 5 minutes already gone off the board. You've got to get back 9 frags unreturned at that. I mean, there's a start, but every single one of these frags, you can see how low GaRpY is. And when Spart1e is just connecting with all of the shots, your life is pretty miserable.
You're in a position now where even if you concede a frag, if you can get the opponent as weak as physically possible, then we're going to go into the next play, a delicious steal, and
Perfect.
That is the timing of Spart1e coming to play. He plays around the timing so well that being able to land a surgical orb like that, anything that would have been an opportunity for GaRpY to get that extra frag, gone, taken away, and now all the work having to go just to get one more here. What I was going to say before that is that, look, Spart1e's got a sizable lead, right? All he has to do is keep getting a few frags here and there and just play the game of resources. You know, we have 4 minutes left. It's unlikely he's going to lose this map the way things go.
Yeah, GaRpY's going to have to continue to overcommit, which leaves him vulnerable to that. It leaves him vulnerable to losing items.
GaRpY combo killed himself. I mean, he went for the item, right? He had to try, but Spart1e was already prepared for it.
Spart1e is on it today, and this match isn't massively important to his personal life in the championship, but he can work his way up the leaderboard because he's still in a chance of
Oh my god.
greater than 9th. And you know, when he plays like this, he looks like he deserves to be higher up in the leaderboard. It's just about consistency with Spart1e. But you know, we're in map 1 of 3. Let's see how the other 2 maps play out.
I just am in awe of how many rails Spart1e is just forcing into this situation. I want to bring up those stats. He's fired 50 rails this map, 64% accuracy. If that doesn't say it all about how much GaRpY has straight up not been allowed to exist on this map sometimes, I don't know what does. The aggressive push, yeah. GaRpY, again, he gets a frag, but how weak is he? And with the Mega about to spawn, Spart1e should by all means at least get one shot here to stop that Mega from being anything, and it will. GaRpY now loses out on Mega. He takes it, but you'd never have guessed.
To your point though, when you're hitting that much damage with a rail, it's often unreturned damage. It shows you how hard, if not impossible, it is if your opponent is connecting like that. Now, GaRpY did overextend a lot in this game. He was already down by a huge amount within the first 2 or 3 minutes. So, you know, take that with a pinch of salt, that statistic, but you have to still hit your shots, and that's exactly what Spart1e is doing time and time again.
Well, you look at those extra rails on the board, and often it's that's one of the furthest ire orbs that we've seen in some time, I imagine. What I was going to say is that on this kind of map in particular as well, those rails landing, it's stuff that you get hit on spawn, right? It's that extra bonus damage, waits for the jump back, knows that GaRpY, the forbidden fruit, can't resist that light armor, and he just sits there and waits, gets his prize. This is by absolute guaranteed going to be a first map for Spart1e, and a little bit concerned, Dan. I know you said that this actually could be a map that favors GaRpY because some of his better performances have come from Deep Embrace. This was certainly not one of those performances.
No, not at all. It went from bad to worse extremely quickly, and I think the more worrying thing is that he didn't seem to have a plan B. He never looked to try and slow the tempo. He just played into Spart1e's hands, played Spart1e's game. And even the best players struggle against Spart1e when you play his game. You know, when you take these heavy rail fights, these heavy aim fights, you don't play the items strategically. Spart1e's always in with a shot. So have to go back to the drawing board a little bit with what the plan was here and look at how to reset going into Ruins and subsequently Awoken, because Ruins you can slow it. He's got a scale bearer as well, which gives him a little bit more of a padding, lower risk gameplay if he wants to play around that. And that's what I'd like to see him doing.
Sending him straight out of the window. Nice little bit of ragdoll there, but yeah, it has to be said. It's almost ironic, Dan, talking about GaRpY not having a plan B on this map. Normally we would say that about Spart1e during the middle of this stage. There are some similarities in their game plan, and I think it comes down to maybe the risks that are taken, the almost heart on the sleeve gameplay, and in this case Spart1e, one would definitely say that he kind of just does that a little bit better than GaRpY right now. They do have similar styles, but Spart1e just able to add that extra element of clean on top. And I think that this has been a very clean map for him so far. Just getting damage on board. His aim has been phenomenal. I say that as he gets out-railed, but He's not going to worry about it now. That was a fantastic first map, and one that maybe sets the pace for a potential 3-0. I do hope the Ruins goes a little bit better for the lad from Britain, because, I mean, that Scale Bearer, like you said, right, one of the most powerful champions out there right now on Ruins. You almost get vibes of the Clutch of old, back in the day when he had that kind of shield that was invincible.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. That was just absurd. But
I mean,
no.
in similarities of you pick Scalebearer on a map where there's just this oppressive nature. It is a heavy champion that has something that you have to respect, and there's an element of, I want to do this, or I want to be in this area, and there's very little you can do to stop it. That is where I see the similarities. I don't think anything gets as wild as Clutch was back then, but I mean, like, a similar purpose of it being useful on a map like Ruins, I do see a few comparisons there.
Yeah, there's a few, but yeah, nothing's absurd as Clutch in his heyday, where you could just run at people damage-free, shooting faster than, like, that was just, yeah. But no, I see what you mean. You can close the gap. You got the stack. You got the speed. It's about using it strategically. It's always about using things strategically. And on this map, GaRpY got very much sucked into the rail game of Spart1e, didn't find a way to check that, to play around it. Credit to Spart1e, he forced that issue onto GaRpY, and you would favor Spart1e every day of the week in this type of encounter. So definitely want to see something a bit more reserved from GaRpY. Felt like he didn't have the respect he needed to against Spart1e in this map. 3,700 damage with the rail alone. He did 2/3 of GaRpY's damage with one weapon. So it was just full credit to how well Spart1e played that map.
It was that perfect combination of getting those kind of, well, at this point, classic rails. Now, it's not a particularly old map, is it, Deep Embrace? But we're just so used to seeing someone land a frag and then their control over the opponent's spawn and being able to hit those rails immediately. So it's right, you've lost a frag, but you're immediately behind, not just because you're a frag behind, but you've just taken a rail. So what do you do now? The opponent's in control. And then outside of that, he's still landing rails all over the place because he just got phenomenal reads on where GaRpY was going to go. I think there was very little instances where GaRpY went somewhere on the map that Spart1e was not just waiting for, spending the majority of that map looking through his point of view. It's he sat in a good position, held an angle, GaRpY comes around the corner, bam, done. Next frag.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about when I see GaRpY, and he's played on the keel a few times. I've seen him play really solid performances on the defense. He's been traversing the low ground, playing very slow, using the audio cues smartly, and that just wasn't existent today. Whether he wasn't in the right frame of mind for this particular match, whether he was just down too many frags to feel like he could then retreat into that type of playstyle, which is probably a bit more where his head was at, it just didn't happen. And because he was constantly chasing the game, Spart1e was able to dictate the tempo, dictate how GaRpY was playing, and he was just connecting with everything. And by that point, GaRpY was probably a bit frustrated and just continued to bang his head against that wall.
Something that's, when you tell someone to kind of almost like keep their cool in game, it's often an easier said than done scenario, right? Because anyone that's played in a competitive setting, no matter what the game is, it just introduces something different. You know, it's a different element to kind of just sitting and doing ranked or just everyday, regular old matchmaking. The second something is on the line and this is your one time to play this opponent in this stage, and it's been, this is week 11, keep in mind. And we've had so many weeks already. You kind of need to shake it off, but it's hard to do sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to think of that mentally. Quake is, as you hear all the players say, it's so draining, and as much as you go into these games with a game plan, things can change in a matter of seconds to the point where you have to just completely change the strategy. In other games like RTS or tactical shooters where you have round based or a lot slower, you can plan it out. Whereas Quake, you have to react very much on the fly. And as you said, going into map 2, you have no time to breathe, no time to reflect or de-stress. It's just continuing balls to the wall tempo, and it's up to the players to be able to control that. Emotions.
GaRpY using the beginning of this map to understand there's very little chance here that Spart1e is going to just drop down. So GaRpY focuses on getting the weapons first. Unfortunately, not a particularly clean beginning. I mean, he had the pieces in play, but caught changing weapons right as Spart1e comes through the teleporter. And you can see there, the piercing sight is used. He knew it was the time to go through the telly. That was not a reckless decision. And GaRpY pays the price for it with a frag down already.
Yeah, made the best of a bad situation with the bull rush as well. But Spart1e, as you said, perfect decision making going through that telly. Also delaying this heavy as well, putting a long split between the two major items, feeling confident to be able to pick up both of them in the next round, or at least pressuring this mega heavily. That's what we're going to see him do. He's got the piercing sight as well. Great rockets from GaRpY defending that position. Piercing sight doesn't come out. He knows GaRpY will be hanging around, but he wants to make a move over towards this mega.
GaRpY is the one that's in place. The piercing sight is used though, which means extra information. Drops down and gets LG, but barely anything. Tickling the Galactic Warlord, to be honest, because GaRpY holding the defensive positions. It means that he's very much kind of been able to, I'm not going to use the term offset the delay, but he is now the one that's in control of both items. So Spart1e holding it has ironically given that advantage to GaRpY, who should by all means be able to take this frag, but the missed rail certainly doesn't help. But the roadkill and the charge is going to plug that nicely. Can he get damage? I mean, you know that Spart1e's got no damage. What's he going to do? Get a rocket off maybe? Maybe not. Somehow this has not gone in the favor of GaRpY. Spart1e had like no weapons.
Why? There we go. I thought he was going to try and rail or do something a bit riskier there. Spart1e once again gets a good spawn over by the heavy. Huge amounts of damage coming out. And to Spart1e's credit, he knows the timings of both of these items. And that's why this pressure's coming out. And as strong as a scale bearer is, he's also a chunky target. So he will get melted by even just a starting machine gun.
GaRpY had the right idea holding that teleporter, but I mean, it's going to be such a hard rail to land. Going to have those perfect reactions, and then also, you know, how fast are they going through it? Where are they going to turn? GaRpY not able to land that shot, but he is putting himself in position of the heavy first. With this bull rush in play, Spart1e no doubt knows it's ready, and that's why he's having to try and get a little bit of this bonus damage first. He might not know, though, how little rockets GaRpY is working with. Oh, they don't trade it. A good shot from Spart1e. And those rail offs, I mean, Dan, you're against a heavy champion. You've got a rail and they miss. That's music to your ears, I think.
Yeah, and we've seen that a few times already in this game. It's a bit of a red flag to me in the way GaRpY's playing. He's not trading in these rail encounters, and Spart1e's often getting the upper hand, and that's exactly why he's now won himself a mega. That untraded rail, and GaRpY did not feel confident to push in. Spart1e also knows he's got the momentum to jump down here, but no damage from GaRpY's side, and another clean frag.
The only damage came from a bull rush, and a bonus of getting a frag on top now means Spart1e understands there ain't no bull rush yet, so I can push as much as I want. That was very much a GaRpY accepted his fate. He knows there's no way he's surviving through that teleporter, he's going to get chased, so his highest damage from spawn, it's going to be that gauntlet. Can he deny at least? No, he can't. Spart1e waits for it.
Oof.
And again, this is the Spart1e being one step ahead. Dan, GaRpY has not had this element of surprise. It's been Spart1e's map for 1.5 maps almost.
I think it's more frustration from GaRpY, and because of that, he's being utterly predictable in his aggressions. This time he comes out on top into the damage, but I mean, it was a nothing play, and he won't even be able to win himself a mega at this rate. He hasn't got the stack. The piercing sight comes out to get the positioning, but GaRpY's gone down to the heavy for some reason. That item is long gone. Spart1e is running this map now.
I do think that maybe there was a bit of an item mishap here from GaRpY. I was watching that through his point of view, and he dropped down when there was about 28 seconds or so of it. Like, there must have been some kind of error made. GaRpY with the LG, but it's not going to be enough, and forcing Spart1e down the stairs, if anything, it gives him a position. Takes the rail at the very least, but I am nervous of GaRpY's rails because he misses the shot again, and the positioning from Spart1e means that the bull rush does nothing apart from set up GaRpY for what will no doubt be another frag. There it is. And it's just looking like it's getting from bad to worse. Spart1e has all the control. He has this next level, he knows where GaRpY's going to be because he's got the piercing sight. He gets a frag, but he's weak. I mean, what does he do here?
I mean, these pushes are reckless, and you can see the only frag he gets is just a little bit fortunate. He's being just too predictable in his movements around the map. He needs to try and slow the tempo, play this T-conjunction up top, get on the mega. And he got a rail and lightning gun to work with. Spart1e pushes in here. He's going to be in for a wad of pain. He does hit that rail, which is why Spart1e is delayed. But there's 2 more rails, 3 back-to-back. Spart1e is looking fine.
I'm assuming in the end of game replay, we're going to watch that one through Spart1e's point of view because it was an absolute doozy. 2 clutch rails to land. If he gets hit by the bull rush, he can at the very least take away the heavy and the bonus. Creates that distance and sets up another frag on the board. GaRpY now 6 behind. And as he spawned, that piercing sight comes out, so Spart1e has extra information. The defensive LG, and that will be, as you said, Dan, melted. A rail off spawn, 2 rails, make it a 3rd. GaRpY. Yeah, let's just get another fresh spawn, please. This one, I would like a refund.
Spart1e's looking clean, and he's doing the basics well. And honestly, that's all he needs to do against GaRpY today. It's not been too good maps at all for GaRpY. No, this one is done. You can see him just coming in time and time again. He is, I think pissed is the adjective I'm going to use.
You can see the frustration, man. I mean, there's really no other word you can use for it, is there? Man's just rushing fresh off the spawn, and items there. He's just dogpiling himself straight onto it. This ain't a scale bearer. One would think maybe he'd do this no matter what champion he has at the moment. And that's the pre-death scream. Sparty again looking for these close rails. He doesn't need to have the rail in those final hits. He knows his opponent's wake. He can hear it. He's going to go for it again. Look, he doesn't need it, but he's using it. This is confidence, and it's a big win and a big loss right now, Dan. For Spart1e, no doubt feeling like he is in the element right now. GaRpY has to be feeling probably the opposite, I would think.
I mean, if you generally cared about the third map, you would probably want to try and stop Spart1e from getting momentum and stop himself feeling his aim so well, because you can see by the way he's playing, he's just feeling it, and that's a scary situation to be in. Again, if you're anyone going against Spart1e, and here he comes again, bull rush coming in, but it's going to be another frag for Spart1e.
Dan, he's currently got 79% rail when he's fired 34 shots.
Oh, I mean, and then he's done some good 360s, some 180s with that as well. It's just absurd sometimes.
And he has done all of the damage. He doesn't even need a frag anymore. He can run away for 2.5 minutes if he wishes. And at this point, he's just going to stabilize, slow down the pace a little bit. Likely to concede this, but yeah, GaRpY does manage to land the shot at the very least. But this was a bit of a soul-crushing map, I think, Dan. How one-sided it's been for Spart1e, how many unbelievable shots he's been landing. GaRpY's going to get a little bit of a bonus frag there, but this could not have gone any better for Spart1e and any worse for GaRpY. Remember, this was already a 1-0. Spart1e's going to win the set on this for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Spart1e really needs a 3-0 sitting in 9th, and he can push himself up the leaderboard if he picks up all the points. So it is critical, and you can see that coming out from Spart1e, the way he's playing. You can see he's prepared. You can see him getting better once and once again. I mean, there was a time and a place where it was, I think, stage 1 maybe, stage 2, where Spart1e was sitting up in kind of the upper levels of the leaderboard for good parts of the league. So he's definitely got the capabilities.
This is going to be another one of those classic moments where, look, this map is done, but what can we do to perhaps set the stage for the next one? Can GaRpY string himself a nice chain of frags together? Unfortunately, with those kind of denials, I don't think so. The only thing, really, GaRpY can do here, considering this is a series of maps, is just try and stop Spart1e's momentum. There's nothing else left.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You really need to do that if you want to have a chance, or a better chance, or at least picking up map 3, because when Spart1e feels himself, he's just scary, and he's been connecting from the off today. Sometimes it does take him a little bit of time to feel his way into series, but he has come prepared to play today.
It's just been the rail exhibition so far. As I say that, he misses a couple of shots and it's probably going to go down. Never mind, GaRpY misses the shot, and is Spart1e going to be able to take this anyway? Piercing sight. Uh-oh, yeah, no way. No way GaRpY was going to survive that one. The moment Spart1e locked that piercing sight in, and with that position, you're not going to react in time before you get shot.
You've also got to be looking at this if you're a challenger out there and saying, this is the level I have to play at to get into the QPL. You know, Spart1e sitting in 9th. And when he puts in performances like this, you have to question how, but it's also because the competition is just that high. So if you do want to get into the QPL, you got a high bar to match.
If there's one weapon that has just been the elephant in the room today, it's been that rail. Another map where Spart1e obtains over 3,000 damage with the railgun alone. It has been his star performer. And I think that as we now go into this final map, Awoken, it's BJ versus Anarchy. Anarchy is tender. Anarchy is a glass cannon in this kind of setting. Yes, he's got the injection, but if Spart1e is hitting the shots he's hitting in these two maps, and he's got more stack, I am really worried for GaRpY in this third and final map.
I agree. You have to hit him. You have to be... No, you have to let him hit you as well. There is a way to play around it. If you know your opponent's hitting, you can change your style, and that's what GaRpY's not done. He's not changed his style. A lot of this map, a lot of last map, in all honesty, was just GaRpY plus forwarding into Spart1e. So, again, got to take these statistics with a little bit of pinch of salt, because GaRpY, unfortunately, was not playing his A game for large parts of these two maps thus far. Not to say he can't turn it around in map 3, but it does look slim at best. And so if he does continue with the same style. You're right, it will be brutal.
This is not one of those scenarios where Spart1e's in a situation where he'll say, hey, look, I've got the first 2 maps. You know, when we have a bit of a laugh in this third and final map. Some players in Pro League have kind of been known to take their foot off the gas in that final map because the series is won. In this case, Spart1e wants everything he can get. Remember in Season 2, every map you win counts. And in these final weeks, they count more than ever. And in Spart1e's position, he's going to want these wins. What a performance he's put on today. Even before we enter Awoken, this has just been an absolute body bag.
Yeah, and I think in terms of context, I think Cooler's the one setting up in 8th, so it puts even more pressure, if it is Cooler, it puts more pressure on 8th place to perform, because anything less than a 3-0 and he could find himself a relegation, and there are some mighty good players coming up through the challenges, so one of these players, both of these players could actually be going home and finding themselves trying to fight their way back in next season.
What an unbelievable situation that we find ourselves in, where the gap between challengers and the lower end of Pro League could not be any tighter. I think it's a far cry from how things used to be. I will admit, it just says about how high the skill ceiling is in this community, how many players, hungry players, are able to play at this level, where we're looking at players like this and we're going like, these challengers, they could absolutely take these spots if people aren't keeping their gameplay tip-top, and it will be Awoken as our next destination. GaRpY, the pieces are not really in his favor. He's going to have the mobility, but with how reckless he's been in this entire series, I don't think mobility is going to help him. If anything, it could be a hindrance being able to go that fast. Around those corners, if Spart1e's lying in wait, and he already knows that you're going to go around that corner, right?
Yeah, and Anarchy, with these air control champions where you get that head of speed, you can find yourself in a bit of a rhythm that can be to your detriment, as you point out. So Spart1e, if he does connect, we said it's going to be an easy win. I just want to see GaRpY play a proper duel. I mean, unfortunately, he's not been on any sort of game today. This has been, you know, an F from me in terms of performance, and he'll be the first one to admit that. And it'd be nice to see him go out on this map with a bit more of a stronger performance, because he needs something. You know, it's been a really rough season for GaRpY, and he just needs a map win. I mean, this whole Quake, 90% of playing Quake is a mental game, and having that confidence, and you know, he's void of it. So want to see it pick up a map for his sake.
Well, we will be looking at things from GaRpY's point of view for yet another time on this map. Beginnings uses that opportunity. I like how he has that preemptive LG out. You know, it's the most damage you can get, and I guess a bonus would have been stopping Spart1e from having those kind of aggressive rocket jumps that he does go for. Tons of damage that's been output, and we look for the shotgun. Spart1e gets as much damage as he can, all things considered. And I think already, oh my god, Spart1e somehow able to turn that into something with no weapons, uses it just to create space. He knows GaRpY's not going to chase, and he gets the Mega. Nice little spawn play there.
Well, this is the first time he's gone up off the start of a map. So, can he now use that impetus and just grind it out? You know, every minute he plays better. Every rotation he takes, he feels a little bit better. Spart1e though, you know, well, GaRpY knows that. GaRpY knows the pain that Spart1e could bring with a rail at hand, and that's why he is playing slow around this T-Con here. Nice rockets coming out, 2 connecting there. Spart1e come on through the dual wield.
Very
Still
nice.
Trying to challenge for that Mega, but GaRpY is the one to pick it up.
Having a good start. It's been fantastic for him so far. Spart1e denies the heavy. And this does mean that he's going to be dealing with an Anarchy with no armor, so this isn't going to be too much of an unfavorable position, but he is able to stop Spart1e from getting to the LG in time. However, GaRpY, still weak, has to be careful of that defensive machine gun, because, good lord, my man's on death's door, 15 HP. Anarchy, not particularly good right now. Here comes the Mega Spawn, of which Spart1e takes. Only 3 frags separate them. Make that 2.
No, that was a perfect situation to sacrifice your life for a heavy there. I mean, 1, he knew he was going to get it, and 2, he'd already done the rounds and taken the lights before his previous death. There was nothing up on the map for the Anarchy. So amazing play by Spart1e to steal it away. Yes, he lost the frag, but you can see the longer term play here. 2 big rockets, 2-1 already. Spart1e back in control here, pressuring the spawn. Big rocket from GaRpY though. He's going up aggressively. He knows the Mega's up, but he can't challenge from it. He's not in position. Can he get away without taking a rail? The answer is yes.
A major push coming out from GaRpY though, looking to punish those missed rails and then some. However, another missed rail. Spart1e's accuracy has not been quite what it was before. A major push, looks for the last minute rail before death. I think, again, conceding it and just trying to maximize the damage. Might not have got the rocket. Remember, we're dealing with Anarchy. This guy's a little bit easier at dealing with those kind of rocket fights. So just his air movement, really. And the defensive play from GaRpY in position for this Mega. Spart1e unable to stop it, but he's getting good rocket damage. Almost forced to trade, but not quite, as GaRpY leading the charge by 3. And this is the first time in all 3 of these maps that he has had the upper hand. And I think he's doing a good job with it so far.
He is, and now Spart1e's not connecting with all the rails as he was last time. So these pushes from GaRpY, they're beginning to work out, and that's why we see him in control. Speed of the Anarchy's there. Anarchy's obviously a lot harder to hit. GaRpY's using it well. He's also now slowing down the pace. He's feeling more comfortable in his gameplay. Big rocket, the dual wield's there, but Spart1e's not going to be able to stick around for long. Actually, nothing coming out from Spart1e this time. 5-1 catch-up. The map has been turned on its head.
Oh, that was a mishap. Though no. GaRpY definitely forced. Oh my lord. Man hurt his head. Ouch.
And now we're looking at Spart1e saying, how do you turn this around? GaRpY's the one in control. Big split between the major items. Spart1e connecting with nothing. So GaRpY just taking strong positioning up on the mid ground here and pressuring Spart1e over by the lights. Really solid basic awoken play, but Spart1e at this point has nothing to counter it. He's starting early by the heavy, but GaRpY's there in time. Once again, the dual wield comes out, nothing connecting, and another clean frag for GaRpY.
We can see just this center point of the map has been fully commanded by GaRpY so far. And with the center point on Awoken, that often does mean the major items at the same time. There's been such a split between the two of them at this stage. GaRpY. Curious over how Spart1e can somewhat stabilize this. He's got all the weapons, doesn't have a rail though. This rail has been kept from him for some time, and I think that's quite a good shout from GaRpY to keep it away from him, even if his accuracy hasn't been all the way there. Ow,
that
LGs!
play was nearly perfect. And that's exactly what GaRpY should have done in previous maps. Slowing the pace down, getting up into the mid ground, controlling it, but GaRpY, perfect timing, pushed in with a great stack. Spart1e hadn't done his kind of homework to do enough damage to slow down GaRpY prior to that engagement, but you can see the thought process. He tried going aggressive for the first 5 minutes, it wasn't working. Now he's trying to slow the pace down. Unfortunately, nothing's been connecting until now. It feels like it's the first rail he's hit all game, and he has momentum to try and get back into this one.
There's been a lot more of this general, I would say, patience. I know this is Anarchy we're looking at, but less just running straight into Spart1e, because that's exactly what happened last time. But I guess the one thing in common was that he had a disastrous start on both of those maps. Being in control for as long as he has been. At no point has Spart1e been like, right, you know, he's taken the upper hand. And it is getting progressively more and more difficult. The dual wield, the real element that makes BJ who he is not something that has been allowed to exist. So I think the combination of high mobility and the injection has given GaRpY just this absolute advantage, on top of how he's already playing the map, of course.
Yeah, there was a few times where he got a little bit fortunate in the early games. Spart1e not connecting with damage, you would expect him to. But ever since then, as you say, he's controlled the map, he's run away with it, and he's limited the effectiveness of Spart1e with both the dual wield and the rail. So strategically, GaRpY's now turned up to play. It's been the first map he's got in control early. And the first map where Spart1e wasn't connecting with, 80% rail plus for the first 7 minutes. So GaRpY showing us he can play at this level, and he is completely worthy of it. Should be picking up this map. I know there's 3.5 minutes to go, but with 9 frags of difference and on an Anarchy, this is definitely should be in GaRpY's bag.
I would definitely say that there has additionally been this element of, GaRpY. These two players are able to get a decent amount of damage every fight, and GaRpY so often has left the fight tender, and it's kind of hard for him to get much else from it. The existence of this injection, the amount of times that GaRpY's got a frag and has either injectioned in the middle of it or straight afterwards, means that I guess just that difference isn't as apparent as it once was. He's able to secure that frag, pop the injection, and then bam, we can start to go for the next objective, whatever it may be.
Yeah, he's played Anarchy exceptionally well. I mean, I've got to wonder why the slash was banned in the first place when there's an Anarchy out there which plays this map a lot better. But he's been using it really well. You can see Spart1e just not connecting. There's 3 missed rails in a row.
Yeah, that was a free shot as well. GaRpY didn't even know where he was.
Yeah. The context of the leaderboard obviously doesn't mean a lot to GaRpY, but this loss could mean Spart1e stays in relegation. It's a little bit of a slip up from his perspective, how well he was playing all series long. But on the flip side, as you said, Ketchup, earlier, you have to credit GaRpY with the mental fortitude to come back and play what is effectively a strong, solid game here.
When you just look at what happened in those first 2 maps, you would look at this and you would just not connect the dots. Like, as GaRpY had like a 10-minute timeout or something, was there a moment for him to kind of get his head together? No. You know, we go into the lobby, admin says, are you ready? And GaRpY's the first person before anyone's even said anything that he's ready to jump in again. Map after map after map. So with no time to refresh himself mentally, has been able to pull off a dominant performance on this 3rd map. I think that's really good for him going into the later ends of this stage, it has to be said. Not just in this, but the obvious potential of the relegations up and coming.
Yeah, I mean, GaRpY's obviously looking at that already, eyeing up his opponent and working out how he's going to stay in this league. He's definitely still good enough to stay in this league. You have to look at the history of his time here, and he's stayed in it a number of stages now. And yes, he's not picked up series, but if you just look at the consistent level of results and how close so many of them are, you have to say he has the capability, and he's not converting those into series. And a lot of that is just confidence and a mental game, you know. If a few of those results went a different way, we could have seen him in a completely different light. But that's not the case. He will be down in relegation against challengers, but what a difficult opponent to go up against.
There's this very obvious conversation of it's not just a matter of preparing for your challengers' opponents. They need to make sure they're well prepared for you. You're the one that's been in Pro League for this long, and you are the one that's able to get maps against some of the absolute best players on the planet. But it's always a bit of an interesting conversation, isn't it, Dan? How we're kind of sitting here still, pretty much 2 years later, and we're talking about the importance of being able to get a map, but not a series. There does eventually reach a point where the series is what matters, right? Like, it's not about getting those single maps. And I think that GaRpY will know that better than anyone. So I just love to see more consistency from him. That's just what breaks my heart as an extremely biased GaRpY fan.
It's something that separates a very good player from the very best players. I mean, this is the same discussion we had when Tox was in the QPL. Someone that put in some of the best performances we've seen, but consistently was losing out in the latter ends of maps, and because of that was losing out on subsequently series. And unfortunately, he's not even in the challengers now, because that's the level we're at in the QPL. So it's something he needs to look at and reflect on. He's got a very tough ask with Sharon and Basita in the challenges, so he's going to have to fight and continue to progress even these last few weeks to get into the challenges in best shape he can do.
Now, a dominant final map there from GaRpY, but an overall series win for Spart1e. And if you've just joined us, and this was the first map that you've joined us for today, those first 2 maps for Spart1e were a beatdown. And on that note, it does give us other things to talk about though, Dan. And we mentioned it in the later stage of the map. We do need to give GaRpY his well-earned props for being able to keep his head in the game off the back of 2 maps that, going into a third, many players, I think, for lack of a better term, would have just given up. I think they would have gone into this half-cocked, and that just would have been it. GaRpY not one of those players, even though there was visible frustration in the first 2 maps. However, we go in and it's an entirely new experience. And that is how these high top-level players are able to just somehow forget that those maps even happened.
It's what about? I mean, there we go. That's nice to see. But I think, like, you have to take it in context, right? Like, he's got into this series. He thought he could put in some results. Spart1e was hitting everything. That will always frustrate someone like anyone, really, but especially someone like GaRpY. Plan A didn't work, and at this point, he has nothing to play for. So mentally, he's always going to check out slightly earlier than someone that has something on the line. So I have to give him his dues there. It's obviously not ideal to have to witness a bit of a mauling when someone's really not putting their heart and soul into it. But Spart1e has to play his game. He has to connect with his shots. And if you want a highlight reel of rails, watch maps 1 and 2 of this series, because it was spectacular. And then, yeah, mental fortitude to come back in it and keep in the game, even when you have nothing to play for. So he's got himself a map finally, and it was nice to see.
I mean, confidence in Quake is in its purest form. Excuse me. When a player has, you can see it on their point of view. They've got a machine gun, they've got a lightning gun. They hit a rail, the opponent goes, ugh, because they're about to go down. and they just keep the rail out. That's how you know a player's feeling it, you know what I mean? They take that risk because they want that highlight reel moment, and Spart1e able to land it countless times, even on map 2. Anyway, that is enough of our first series. We're going to take a quick break, jump into our second one of the day. Cheers for joining us so far, but there's plenty more Quake where that came from. See you in a bit.